Welcome into the OBR streaming network. This is a brand new edition of The React. My name is Brad Ward. The man next to me is the always fantastic Pete Smith. Good to see you all here filing into the chat. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, and the notification bell so you know every time we go live 5 nights a week here on the OBR streaming network. Up to 8,500 subscribers and growing. We appreciate your contribution. And tell a friend. Keep that number moving upward as we continue to bring you content. We'll have our schedule release special on Wednesday, so don't miss that at 8 p.m. And before that, Browns 3D. So, and All Eyes on Cleveland on Thursday. Browns 3D before that, and then, of course, Browns 3D again on Friday, and things I think I know after that. What is going on, Pete?
Busy day, even though, nothing really happened, but still, There's a lot to talk about.
Lots to talk about. Let's start off with some of the bad news. I don't know how much of a surprise it is at this point, but we got this today from the Browns, or yesterday from the Browns. Excuse me. On Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Jeremiah's health is of the utmost importance to us, and although he has made progress towards recovery, we made the decision to put him on the reserve/pup, which means he will not play football in the 2025 season. Jeremiah has the full support of our team, and we expect him to continue to be a part of the organization, even though he will not return to the field this year. We will not make any predictions on Jeremiah's football future at this time, but we do note that he is in good spirits and will continue to take the advice of world-class medical experts who will continue to guide his progress and recovery. And then, Jeremiah released his own letter. I'm not going to read that one, but this isn't a huge surprise, right, Pete? But, I mean, what do you take away from this? And do we know, can you delve anything in regards to this about his long-term future?
It's not a surprise. The Browns have been sort of working as if he wasn't going to be around this season, both in terms of how they've handled free agency and then on top of that, drafting Carson Schwessinger 33rd overall. I don't know that you can necessarily glean anything about his future other than to say that the way the Browns have sort of structured all of their deals, they're all sort of set to end next year. So they signed Devin Bush. We'll see if he even makes it to the season, but 1 year. Jordan Hicks is in the final year of his contract. Jerome Baker was signed for a year. Certainly this suggests that he has a much better chance to make the roster. The only guy who's sort of here for the long term is Schwessinger, and Schwessinger doesn't play the same position as JOK. I mean, I think this year Schwessinger could be the weak side linebacker if Hicks is playing in the middle, but I think long term the Browns want Schwessinger to be the Mike, and if JOK can come back, he slides into Will, and those are your two guys. So I don't know how much the Browns are necessarily believing that this is a real possibility or not, but they're certainly playing it as if it's a real option that it could happen. And ultimately, if missing this year means you can get JOK back, they'll take that 100 times out of 100. Like they're not gonna, put him in a situation where he might be, sort of at risk, and then potentially lose him forever at that point. I mean, they're doing right by him in this situation. Obviously, he's trying to do everything he can. Hopefully, in 12 months, it's a different conversation. And who knows, even by that point, he might be talking differently. Now, the other part that sort of makes you feel good about, not necessarily the prognosis or anything, but it's not like he's going away. He is, everything says he's going to be here. So he's staying involved. I think if he wasn't, obviously, if he could just simply announce his retirement, and that would be it.
Yeah.
Potentially. But he seems to be staying engaged as much as possible. Obviously, that is better in terms of his chances of returning, but also just trying to work as hard as possible because he has guys in that locker room he wants to be back for. So I'm not going to go any further than that. It's just this is exactly the situation I expected. I expected he was going to be ruled out for the year with whatever hope, whatever percentage that is, however minute that is. I don't know. With the hope that they can, in a year, be getting excited for Carson Schwetzinger and JOK at linebacker.
Yeah, that's obviously the best case scenario. There's comments about him working with world-class, medical people, continue to work. I think it's a good sign that, he isn't retiring, obviously. I'll be interested to, I'm going to ask this question. I'm going to have Dr. Morse on Thursday, I think, and ask him what can change in a year. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of the leap that you have to take here is like what can change in a year and this type of an injury. And maybe he can answer that better. So because that's kind of where my mind goes, like what will change in that amount of time? Like it's hard to fathom something having to heal that long, but maybe that's what it is. I have no idea. I don't know enough about it. Right. So.
Right. No, neither do I. I mean, obviously there's a muscular component in terms of whatever the injury is. Then in addition to that, he would then want to also do everything in his power to strengthen the neck muscles, the traps, those type of things, and to best try to protect him going forward and try to mitigate the risk. But beyond that, I have no idea. And the Browns have obviously been very tight-lipped on this in terms of details, understandably. People keep asking Andrew Berry about this every time he talks, and all he talks about is nebulous timeline. It's better in some ways to sort of be done with it. Obviously, there's a roster component which benefits the Browns. He won't count against the roster. So there's that just functional part of it. But also, we're not going to be sitting here talking for the next however many months about, is he going to come back? Is he going to come back? There's a very definitive answer on this year.
Yeah, which is good to have. Now, so they announced him on the PUP, right, which puts him out for 2025. Have they done the same for Watson?
Not at this point.
Okay. I was looking at the R-Lads depth chart, and they have him in red, and they have JOK in red. So I didn't know if that indicated anything. Maybe just a presumption of that at this point. How would they handle Watson? Would it be the same thing?
I'm assuming that they're going to announce him PUP at some point. What I don't know, I think the Browns would be more than happy to do the same thing. I don't know if Watson or his agent will allow that. The player has to agree.
Right.
In some, I should say this. The Browns could do it, but then if he's not happy with that situation, he could be a huge pain in the ass. So maybe that's going to come at some point later. Maybe Watson wants to see how much he can recuperate in some portion of time. I don't know. There is a roster component element with him as well. Where I'm at. I would be happy to fire him to the moon.
Yeah.
And he can play the season there, but anywhere the hell else.
Yeah, agreed. Did you find it at all? I noticed this, and I don't know how many other people noticed this, but did you find it at all interesting that Stefanski and Dillon Gabriel both mentioned Watson's name in their press conference this weekend at rookie minicamp when they were talking about the quarterback room?
I did notice. And my reaction was me noticing, and then also, what does that entail?
Right.
Right. Because by all accounts, you could basically be Kevin Stefanski, sit there in the quarterback room, point at that guy and go, everything he did, do the opposite. Like that. I mean, that's I maybe there's something to be benefit to provide there. Obviously, for Watson, there's an image rehab component with this.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, genuinely, when you hear about everything in terms about how the Browns handle it, kid gloves, the fact that basically there were a whole lot of players in that organization who felt like he did not care, did not try any of those other things beyond the coaching issues and why they had to do the things they did. I don't know. That is something they will have to work out, but certainly, yes, it stood out. I mean, I was hoping that when Jimmy Haslam sort of put his foot down and said, we're done,
right,
that I wouldn't have to hear about it anymore. And yet here we're still talking about it, which is just, it's genuinely annoying because for no other reason, and we're going to get into this whole thing. People are excited, yes, there's this whole sort of, people are perhaps getting too excited about some of the quarterback takes based on a rookie minicamp.
Yeah,
but people are genuinely excited about what is happening with the Browns. And anytime you mention his name, it just, again, he continues to be an energy vampire. He just sucks the life out of it. It's like you want to hear about all the rookies. Certainly you want to hear about these two new quarterbacks, and you just don't want to revisit that thing or even bring it up. So I don't know why they felt compelled in that instance. And I would like, more than anything, not to hear his name anymore, because it just doesn't matter.
Okay, with that thought in mind of not hearing his name anymore, let me say this, ask you one more question about he who is not to be named. Do you get the idea that he is around the building right now?
No, he's in there. He has to be.
He is, right? Yeah, he's there.
Because because the dope managed to injure himself again, and part of like their sort of solution to it, which I don't like, is they basically said you have to now rehab in the building. My answer would have been, you hurt yourself in Miami, now you have to rehab in Siberia. Like,
exactly.
I don't like that the answer is bringing him back in around players who, I'm not gonna say they are actively like hostile towards him, though some might be. But it's a reminder, there is this guy who's making $230 million, or whatever else is left, to do nothing, to have done absolutely nothing. And that is sort of, again, it's just a reminder that this was A, really bad for everybody, and B, like it doesn't send a great message to players who are in that building saying, who are trying to work their butts off. And basically, on some level, there's this whole thing where if players want players to get paid because ultimately you can come back around. But still, it's difficult to think of a more undeserving human being for this than that one.
It's factual. And then he's also pushing out, rehab videos and dramatized videos of him rehabbing in Browns gear in Berea on his Instagram account. So,
yeah, I mean,
super annoying.
It is also like that part of it. It's whatever, he has to wear Browns gear and he has to do it at the facility. He's got, I would call, delusional thought process that he's somehow going to eventually be able to take the field again and play for somebody. I don't know which UFL team would sign him, but that seems like the best shot at this point, because I cannot envision any NFL team going anywhere near this. He's just not worth the PR hit. He's not worth the headaches that he clearly provides. But listen, he's going to do what he's going to do. Now, it's interesting that the team has basically all but ignored it. They don't care. They're not even going to acknowledge. It's not like they're retweeting it like they do everything. Every rookie who breathes is being reposted on the team's social media. But they're not touching that.
Yeah, definitely a good thing to see that. All right, so get past that part of this and the kind of the down part, JOK, that noticing that, and rookie minicamp was generally seemed very exciting. Everybody was positive. I thought both rookie quarterbacks Shedeur and Dillon Gabriel did an excellent job in front of the press. What did you think?
I thought all the rookies were really good. I just think that the draft class they have is very media savvy, and that includes Harold Fannin, who, expressed the fact that he's not super comfortable in that environment. But I think Quinshon Judkins is really, really good on camera. I think Carson Schwessinger does a really nice job. I just think all of those guys are really good on camera, certainly better than I am. On camera and presenting themselves in that light. But yes, to specifically to the quarterbacks, I thought they were great. And I guess I find it strange. I guess I find it strange how people are trying to read things into them, into some of the things they said that aren't really there. And some of that might be just reading it versus hearing it. And there's some of that element, but like, they are clearly people with a certain, approach and mindset, and they're focused on what they're trying to do. And, they aren't getting thrown off by sort of, they're not like curveballs or tricky questions. It's just that if you answer them poorly, it's going to be held against you. And I thought, I don't necessarily think that they were asking anything unfair, but I think they handled everything pretty well. Even if it's largely nothing that's super, soundbite thing. I think Dillon Gabriel's got sort of this. I think it's probably partly because of him being Hawaiian, but he's got this sort of new age hippie energy with him, but through this very focused lens. That's sort of really interesting. And then Shedeur is very. He knows exactly who he is. He's obviously he's done this his whole life in some ways. He's grown up in front of the camera.
Charismatic.
So he comes off well in those circumstances, even though, there were times where he was not even sort of making a real statement. He was just sort of almost parrying some of these questions, and people were just eating out of the palm of his hand. I mean, he genuinely has that gift where people would just gravitate towards him.
Yeah, he does. They thought they were both very good. Two very different styles of kind of handling the media, but both very good and well-spoken. And then, you kind of said like the questions weren't really curveballs, but I thought that some of them were very unproductive and asked in a manner to try and maybe trip them up or put them in a weird spot. I thought at times. I wasn't a fan of some of the questions asked to both of the quarterbacks.
So I didn't think any of them were unfair. I will say this, because I know who largely everybody's referring to some of the questions Mary Kay Cabot asked at Cleveland.com. I would provide this sort of perspective on it. I think she's covering Shedeur. One, she's clearly covering this as if Shedeur Sanders is the main character.
Yeah.
I thought Mason Graham handled the question very well when she basically asked, you weren't who everybody wanted and everybody's more excited about Shedeur. How do you feel about that? And I thought he handled it well. I think at some point that might start to grind on him a little bit, but whatever. He's a defensive tackle. He's not super exciting, which we said even the moment he was drafted. He's just, until he's doing it on the field, he's going to be sort of not super interesting. Although I do think Mason Graham presents very well. I think he's good on that stuff. But the other part is, one, I think Mary Kay is presenting Shedeur as the main character. And I think although she is writing for a local audience, I think she's trying to storytell more to a national audience. And I think when you think in terms of that framework, I think it becomes a little bit clearer why she's asking some of the questions he's asking, like asking about the president, talking about it on social media, like those type of things, because those are things that happened during the draft. And those are things that I think, yes, there's certainly a local audience that will engage with that, but I think that is specifically engineered towards trying to get a national audience to click, to engage, to do all those things. And I think for some people, it can be very awkward and you can roll your eyes at points. And, I'm certainly guilty of that. I don't think it's necessarily wrong. And certainly it could work very well for her. But it is awkward when you go up and down the line. When he was the last picked rookie, and you ask all of them sort of how does it feel to be on the same on the team Shedeur? How do you react? How did you react when they picked Shedeur? All that is what she's doing, and it's fine. Like, again, I it's not certainly my preference, but I understand why somebody would want to cover it that way.
Sure.
So you get these weird, what seemingly are oddball questions, though. If the president of the United States is tweeting about anyone on the team, that somebody's got to ask that question in some ways, even though I wouldn't, even though I think it's kind of silly.
Yeah.
Somebody had to ask that question. She was more than happy to do it.
Somebody asked Shedeur Sanders, why are you so likable? Like, what is that?
That's one of those. There were a number of ham-fisted questions at one point. Dillon Gabriel was asked how important spirals are to him. It's like
that too.
Take a pass. You don't have to ask a question. You could just wait it out.
Yeah, you can pass.
But that is one of those things. It's like a bad stunt to to butter somebody else. Like, you're so dynamic. How do you explain your popularity?
Yeah.
It's like, there is that element. So again, I found some of those questions weird, and don't get me wrong. I poke fun at some of this stuff, and I freely admit, like, asking questions is far more difficult than it looks. But these type of things also happen, and some of it is just like some of these people aren't well versed in these players, and it's like they're figuring it out on the fly. Shedeur, obviously, most people know about Shedeur, so it's also very much easier to ask him questions because he's been involved with so much, even though he hasn't necessarily been that way, but he's always, been around it. So it's very easy to sort of ask him, these type of things. Like, he talked about how, like, people don't hate him, they hate his dad and all this other stuff. And, it's whatever. Are there people who hate his dad? Sure. Do I think it carries over to him? Occasionally. I think that it becomes a self-serving motive for Dion more than anything else, to be able to say everybody hates me, because he played that card during the draft.
Yeah.
Which I find absolutely preposterous, to say we're gonna freely pass on a quarterback we believe can help us because we don't like the dad. Like, it's not realistic. Now, at the same time, as somebody who's covering this and watching this, I hope that teams did that, and that the Browns are going to reap the benefit that he's way better than the fifth round, and hopefully he's a second or first round quality quarterback and has the chance to be a franchise passer. I mean, that would be the dream scenario.
There are certain, and we'll get to some of this, but there are certain facets of the media that are hung up on the same thing the national media was hung up on, and that the reason he went to the fifth round is because people are trying to take him down and trying to bring him down, and for whatever reason, and that anybody that says anything positive about the other quarterback besides Sanders is out to get him and out to try to, hate on him or whatever else. And it's a very annoying angle. But it's real. I mean, there's a lot of people that feel this way. I don't know.
Well, I mean, like, bottom line, we are, in as much as, like when we have Fred Greetham up there and he's covering this and asking questions and stuff, as much as we are just trying to get information and learn stuff, like, these are people who are trying to sell their product, whether that's subscriptions or whatever. So there is a temptation to ask questions that might not be particularly material to playing the position, but the salacious nature is worth something.
Yeah.
So you're going to get that. And Shedeur certainly brings that element to this team.
Yeah.
You know, I've heard any number of extremely bizarre takes, and it's May 12th.
Yeah.
We've not even gone anywhere at this point. And I'm hearing some like stuff that just makes absolutely no sense, does not appear to be based in any kind of reality. And there's an element to this where it feels like some elements are saying anything and seeing what sticks. And, you know, they're most likely not going to be held to account when these things are completely wrong or whatever. I mean, some of this is just guessing and hoping that you're playing the odds correctly and it's going to sort of work out for you. But like, are people really going to come back and hold people who sort of made these grand proclamations, like that the quarterback's going to play, you know, that somebody's telling somebody in the radio that that the Browns are planning to make a big splash in Week 5 and they're going to put Shedeur as the starter in London. That's really interesting. He could be quarterback 4 and not make the team, but sure, we're going to go ahead and have him be penciled in as the starter. It makes no sense. It sounds like there is a certain element to this where people are trying to write a script, rather than just see what happens and let the kid do it.
Absolutely, and and we'll get into it more. But a ton was made of this mini camp, which I don't think really was set up to have a ton made. Of course, there's more competition than usual in the Brown situation with these two than most mini camps, and they had more players there than they've had in years. And we'll get to all that, but like just this whole like, you know, who won the mini camp? Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy.
Well, as I said before, no one before mini camp ever was going to start. No one won mini camp because it's rookie mini camp. They are competing against a handful of second-year guys, but almost entirely guys who were just in college, and they were better than most of them. So the threshold for them to clear was, don't make anyone in the media go, "Oh my God, how did they take this guy?"
Correct. Yeah.
And you know, by all accounts, you know, don't get me wrong, it's not nothing. All 7 guys cleared that threshold. We're not sitting here going, "Oh my God, how this guy doesn't look like an NFL player."
Yeah. All right. This is the React. That's Pete Smith. I'm Brad Ward. The Browns signed some safeties before we get to videos here, Pete. And they signed some of the tryout players. 3, I think, is what I have here. So
3 tryout receivers.
Yeah, 3. So we're going to go over those. I went over the entire tryout list on things I think I know. But these 3 receivers stick, and I have a theory on why the wide receivers, but we'll talk about that here in a minute. But the Browns do bring in some veteran safeties here. We had talked about names and gone back and forth, but it's Damontae Kazee, formerly of the Steelers. They bring in, and then they brought in Rayshawn Jenkins as well. What is your immediate reaction to both players? For me, it feels like Kazee is the better of the 2, I think, right? And who fits in your kind of free safety competition with Hickman better?
My immediate reaction to these moves was the Browns are higher on Ronnie Hickman than even I expected.
Really? Okay.
Kazee can certainly be a competent free safety. He can line people up. He can do those things, which is certainly very important. They are seemingly giving Ronnie Hickman a real shot to win that job.
Yeah.
At which point, Damontae Kazee becomes Rodney McLeod.
Yeah.
The 3rd safety who's more of a coverage guy. I'm going to guess. I could be wrong. He's going to end up with a contract near the league minimum. Maybe there's some bonus attached, but I suspect it's going to be very low.
Yeah.
And Rayshawn Jenkins is going to be DeAnthony Bell. Rayshawn Jenkins, although he has experience playing all over the place, he's always been, to me, and maybe the data backs this up, I think he's been better close to the line of scrimmage. And they don't have that. Like they lost, obviously, McLeod, he retires. They lost D'Anthony Bell, he signed with Seattle, and they lost Juan Thornhill, they cut him. So they had 3 spots to sort of address. Neither of these guys is going to be a big money signing. They're both, I'm glad, as I said, I think they're both close to the league minimum in contract, which gives them added flexibility. But they really seemingly want to give Ronnie Hickman a shot at this. And it's on him to see if he can really do it. And on one hand, the thing I like about potentially a Ronnie Hickman type setup is that, to me, then suggests maybe the Browns are more inclined to lean into being combo safeties as opposed to a true free and a true strong. Yes, in most situations, if you are going to man up a tight end, Grant Delpit's going to do it because he's really good. But the thing is with Grant Delpit, if you're playing a team that's not super inclined to the tight end position, where he's not specifically going to be geared up to sort of take away that player, he can do everything. Like Grant Delpit's underrated in terms of just how good he is at across the board and ability to contribute. So if Hickman was to win that job, and I've always viewed him more of a combo safety. Pre-snap, you can show too high or whatever, and then one guy can drop to the deep middle, and the other guy can do play man coverage or play up or do any number of things. I think that gives them the ability to disguise coverages a little bit more, to fool the offense a little bit more. But if Hickman can't do it or gets hurt or something, KZ can be that true or free. He's not the prototypical, like Thornhill was. He's much lighter, which is why I think part of the reason I think he's going to end up being more of a slot player. He's more of built like a nickel than he is a free safety. But they have that ability to do that. Likewise, Rayshon Jenkins naturally becomes Grant Delpit's true backup, in addition to being able to do the things that maybe D'Anthony Bell could offer in terms of being able to play close to the line of scrimmage. But ultimately, he becomes more of the backup, strong, that's probably going to have to play a bunch of special teams. But I do think that the KZ dynamic, there was a possibility that Browns were going to maybe go spend a decent chunk of money and bring in more of a proven veteran where you go, boom, he's the starter. They didn't do that. I think they're going to give Hickman every shot at this because, look, the upside for them is massive if Hickman can do it.
Right.
Undrafted rookie, if he can, sort of earn a contract extension, you got an extra player out of the 2023 draft that is now becoming a real player for you. And additionally, because they did what they did with Carson Schlesinger, that might take some of the pressure off that safety position. They haven't had a guy who can do what he can do. JOK can do a lot of things, and JOK is really good as a weak side linebacker. But when they get to true passing situations, they want to do things like invert 2, which is the bane of my existence with this team. Carson Schlesinger can turn and run. He can go. You're not going to be watching Sione Takitaki struggle to get back as Puka Nacua suddenly flies down the middle of the field wide open. Carson Schlesinger can get there. He can cover ground. He can do some underneath stuff. He can do some things that can protect the third level of the defense. If he's as good as advertised, or what I believe he can be, it's also going to make it so Grant Delpit's always going to be that dude who's willing to, be aggressive, come up and play like an extra linebacker. That's just who he is. But it does take pressure off that free safety. I know people we're so mad at Juan Thornhill for not being this downhill dude. That was never his job. Like, if you were expecting him to be that guy, you were going to be in for a disappointment. And my opinion on the fact that I wish they still had Thornhill, even though maybe they don't want to pay him $6 million. I think Juan Thornhill will be really well served to have Carson Schlesinger in front of him. So whether it's Hickman or KZ, I think they are going to benefit from the presence of Schlesinger if he can sort of step in and be that guy that they drafted him to be.
Interestingly enough, I was just looking at while you were talking, I was looking at Jenkins' snaps throughout his career. And it looks like he kind of started out as a free safety a little bit in 2019 for, was he with the Chargers? Yeah. The Chargers. Huh?
I thought he was drafted by the Jags. Am I wrong?
I have him as 2017 drafted by the Chargers, played 4 years for the Chargers.
Okay.
And then went to Jacksonville. So in 2019, he played 876 snaps in free safety, 55 in the box. That was his third year in the league. Now, the next year it flips, right? 2020, he goes to 493 in the box, 117 at free, and 181, a huge jump in the slot. So he's kind of playing more that box role. And then from there, it's like really spread out. So when he goes to Jacksonville in 21 and 22, he's all over the place. 387 in the box, 250 in free, 130 in the slot. The next year, 22, 237 in the slot, 421 free, 504 box. And that year he had 89 tackles. So he's obviously playing around the line of scrimmage more. And then the same thing in 23 with his latest team. I guess he was in Jacksonville till 23. And then his total snaps went in half last year in Seattle. So he went from playing over 1,000 snaps a year for 2 years in Jacksonville to playing about 500, but still spread out more in the box, though, to your point. 235 in the box, 106 in the slot, and then 179 at free. So at one point in his career, and it was one of his better seasons, he did play almost solely over the top, but that was back in 2019. So
yeah, he's big frame, like 6'2". I think he's got long arms. This past season, I mean, that Mike McDonald defense, they asked all their safeties to do everything.
Yeah.
So I mean and you get that experience, and I think that gives Jim Schwartz some options in terms of how they would like to utilize him. But still, I do think ultimately he's primary. I mean, he's got to compete, but I think he's getting into being primarily the backup for Grant Delpit.
6'1", 200 pounds. Was drafted in 2017 as a 4th-round pick to the Chargers. Interesting.
From the U.
So a guy at least there that can kind of do a little of both, but to your point, probably at this point in his career lends more towards a box guy, but at least has some versatility there. But Casey is probably the better player at this point, right?
I think, yes. I think more than anything, I think the thing with Casey is he has a very he knows who he is. He knows what he does.
Yeah.
He's not a big hitter, although he did get suspended for it.
For a massive hit, yeah.
Yeah, he is more inclined to be a cover guy. Again, and he's not a big guy. So if you're expecting him to be some hitter, other than when he gets suspended for it, you're probably going to be disappointed. But he understands his job. He understands how to line people up. Those things absolutely matter because if Hickman can't do it, then he can't do the job. I think he'll be fine. But ultimately, especially the way Jim Schwartz plays defense, you have to be lined up right to start with. He puts an insane amount of pressure on the Mike linebacker, which is why Jordan Hicks is here. So you've got to be right, because given how aggressive they are, if you're lined up wrong, you're already beat. So he puts a ton of emphasis on that. Even though Jordan Hicks has played this defense for years and years and years and won a Super Bowl, he still gets reamed on a regular basis. I mean, that's how important that role is. So it's an opportunity for Ronnie Hickman. We'll see if he can capitalize.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's it, though, right? We don't expect anything else at safety. That's the answer, right? It's going to be those three battling it out, right?
Well, I mean, they've got Donovan McMillan,
the
safety out of Pitt.
They've got
Yeah. So, I mean, again, if these guys are if they are, as I expect, league minimum or damn near, they aren't married to anybody. So they get the opportunity to have a real competition. If somebody can win the job or earn a roster spot, they'll go with them. But,
Yeah.
Andrew Berry's whole philosophy of get the best 90 to get the best 53, this certainly feeds into that. But additionally, they've gotten good results out of Rodney McLeod. They've gotten some of these guys to come in and play really well.
Yeah.
So, we'll see what happens. But I'm genuinely curious to see what Donovan McMillan can provide. See if he's interesting enough to earn a roster spot. And again, without a contract that says they have to keep these guys, I think they're going to keep it open.
Yeah, McMillan is certainly interesting, for sure, as a guy that'll be around, kind of trying to. This is kind of a weird question while we're on this topic. What do you think of Hickman as I've always thought Hickman was okay as a player, and I thought he served a purpose, but he doesn't jump out to me as he's going to be some kind of an all-pro free safety. I guess I've never really seen. I've always been kind of underwhelmed at his ability to kind of put his foot in the ground and go make a play. Maybe that's not what you're asking him to do. You're kind of asking him to play just on top, on all the way on top, free safety a lot of the times. But I guess it's kind of, acceleration to go make plays has never really jumped off the screen to me when I've watched him.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. If not for the contract that came with it, I think people would largely be pretty happy with what Juan Thornhill did. Juan Thornhill didn't get beat deep. Juan Thornhill was able to keep things in front of him. Juan Thornhill was able to execute relative to the scheme. Most of the mistakes that came out of, communications issues were corners making mistakes. When you take the contract out and you have somebody who people are generally just endeared to because he played it at school 2 hours down the road, I think that's largely what you're going to get from Ronnie Hickman. He's just not as gifted athletically. He's not going to make big mistakes. He's going to make the plays he's supposed to make. I don't anticipate that he's going to ever have a wild amount of forced turnovers or anything like that. And you're probably always going to kind of secretly want a little bit more. Out of that position. I think that's where Grant Delpit's sort of got to be who he's capable of being and be the Pro Bowl guy. But Hickman, more than anything, he's when you get into these type of team situations, you're going to need a couple of these guys who just do their job reliably. They don't have to be stars. They just have to do their job. That's what Ronnie Hickman is to me. And ultimately you're fine with that. If you can get that, or maybe he takes another step forward, whatever. But if you sign him to a contract extension, I don't anticipate it's going to be something where you're giving him $7 million a year.
Sure.
And you're happy with what he gives you. You're particularly when you have Jim Schwartz as your defensive coordinator. The defensive line is the whole thing, and your corners matter.
Yeah. And
you already got a highly paid safety. You can't have 11 dudes. Now, obviously you'd like to, they may draft somebody and maybe somebody surprises from that end, but ultimately you need guys who are going to just do their job and get you off the field. And Ronnie Hickman has shown he can do that. I mean, even as a rookie, obviously he had the big pick sixes against the Jets, but he was surprisingly effective down the stretch simply because he didn't do anything wrong. And then obviously he got in, he ran into real problems in the playoff game. But the play you got out of him, those 4 games sort of carried over into the second year. He's just sort of anonymous. You didn't notice him for the right reasons, but you didn't notice him for the wrong ones either. And you're okay with that.
Right. Yeah. It's a good point. All right. The other guys they signed, 3 wide receivers. I went through as I mentioned, I went through the tryout list. They had a bunch of tight ends, a bunch of wide receivers in for tryouts this weekend at minicamp. The wide receivers are all so small, Pete. I don't understand why they can't find somebody over 6 feet tall, but that's okay. Luke Floria is going to sign to be in camp from his tryout status. I have him at 5'8", 175 from Kent State. He's actually from Mentor, so local kid. He's the one, I believe, that caught the back shoulder that's all over social media from Shedeur.
Yep.
Yeah. So
according to the Beast for Dane Brugler, he's 184. He's a lifer at Kent. He'd been there for 5 years.
Yeah.
Was second on the team in receiving this past year. Almost exclusively operates out of the slot. It's one of those things where he impressed enough in the tryout. You see where it goes. He could be gone in a week. Maybe he sticks it out and improves something. But look, and I'll say this for all these guys. One, in the same way that the Browns aren't married to a quarterback, once you get past Jerry Jeudy and maybe Cedric Tillman, they're not married to anyone at receiver. So They've got this like weird level of freedom in terms of how they want to approach this, and they're just going to throw stuff at the wall in some ways, and that sounds bad that they are doing some of that. That is certainly doesn't sound great that you're not talking about getting real dudes and you're sort of just seeing what you can find out of these guys. But the other part is you've also got 4 quarterbacks theoretically. So
yes.
you are going to need guys who can run reps, and you don't want Jerry Jeudy running 5,000 routes.
Yeah.
You don't want those guys being run on the ground. So, I mean, on some level, take this for what you will. It's a huge opportunity for these 3 guys. They are also very disposable. If they get hurt or whatever, the Browns can easily move on to the next one. So, I mean, that's the other part that's sort of like, easy to sort of process why they're doing this.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention later about my, the thought of, listen, they're going to have to try to get these guys with 4 quarterbacks as many reps as they can. And at times, be able to split up and do, 2 fields or whatever, you know what I mean? And you need to have the guys to be able to do that stuff.
Yep.
You're going to need these wide receivers. Floria caught 44 balls, 60 for 688 yards and 8 touchdowns his last year at Kent State. So it's interesting. To your point, and I talked a little bit about this. I've come to grips with, since the Elijah Moore thing and he goes on to Buffalo, we haven't really had a chance to talk about this a whole ton, but since that happened, but like because Elijah Moore was 25 years old, I think it was okay to keep him around if you wanted to. Like if you wanted to, pay him and keep him here as a part of this group because he's 25, that's fine. But you're not going to go out and sign like Gabe Davis or whatever, or any wide receiver who's just a veteran to fill a role for 1 year, because it's just taking snaps away from guys that you want to grow into the role and be part of this future. Like, you're not going to bring a veteran in as a stopgap on a 1-year deal to just take away snaps from somebody you want to grow into that role, sort of. If he's not going to be part of your future, then why do it, right? But like Moore, on the other hand, was 25 years old, and there is still room for growth, and he is young. Mm-hmm. So that's why I was kind of disappointed they let him go. I
don't know if they let him go so much as he found the deal he wanted. I mean, he goes to a team that's going to compete, has a quarterback that's going to, be better. There's a little bit more known.
I mean,
there.
They could have paid him, and it certainly
theoretically, they could have. They made the choice they made. They took the flyer on Deontay Johnson, who's making the league minimum. Whether or not that's going to produce anything, who the hell knows? Another guy, he could be gone in a week. So they are literally just sort of trying this, this sort of tryout and see what happens with these guys. Will that, end up producing anything? Difficult to say. My expectation is we're going to come out of the season still saying they need more wide receiver help. But if they can find somebody, find one guy they can give them something for a couple of years, it's a huge get.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And that's kind of my point is like, yeah, you're right. I agree with you. They are kind of throwing things at the wall here. And if they discover something that's great, and I've kind of come to grips with it, it would be counterproductive on this team to bring in a veteran who you don't envision being part of this team in the long run. You know what I mean? To take away reps from your younger guys like Thrash and whoever else you want to have be a part of this thing. So
yeah, I mean, huge focus on coaching, developing, seeing how quickly guys can process, retain, see if they can improve, and if not, they would not be surprised at all if they run through some of these guys pretty quick.
Yeah, and maybe cut down. They add somebody that elevates the floor of your room. You never know. There's always guys out there, especially now that it's just one giant cut down at the end of the end of the camp or whatever. If they had to go that route. So Floria is the first guy. Kissian Johnson is 6 foot tall, 216, from Western Kentucky. He ran a 4.52 40. That's what I have on him. Western Kentucky kid. He made it. And then Cade McDonald, who is 5'11", 200 pounds from Miami of Ohio, another MAC player.
Yeah, Keyshawn Johnson started at Alabama State in the SWAC. Decided to transfer this last year. He was the leading receiver for 2022 and 2023 for the Hornets. Transfers to Western Kentucky, leading receiver for them. 75 receptions, 900 something yards, and 7 touchdowns or something like that. Now he is a boundary receiver, or at least he had to this point. He has almost played exclusively outside. Has size. I mean, the 216 pounds at 6 foot is a good size. Certainly something the Browns have liked. Nothing, we'll see what happens with him, but weird. I think he's sort of built in when I sort of glanced at his athletic profile, sort of struck me as Dontavian Wicks-esque, but obviously not as talented as a player, and Wicks was way better at Virginia. But nevertheless, got a shot on a one-year guy at the FBS level who had a nice year. It obviously impressed them enough to keep him around for a little bit longer.
I didn't realize that was Keyshawn. I kept calling him Kissian because Keyshawn is spelled K-E-Y. The other Keyshawn. I guess it's Keyshawn, K-I-S-E-A-N. Sure.
Yep.
All right. Great name for wide receiver. Yeah, and then Cade McDonald. So, yeah, and then I just had written down here, to your point, they're going to set up aggressively to be able to run more competition in camp with more wide receivers. You got to have guys that can run routes. So,
yeah,
adding 3 makes sense. All right. Let's get to some of our videos. Most of this is about the quarterback room. And
I'm sorry, I forgot the other receiver. You mentioned him. For some reason, I was waiting for you to prep me. Last receiver. Cade McDonald.
Yeah.
As I watched, like a psychopath, to the Browns daily, Cleveland Browns daily
feed
tape of watching minicamp, and then saw the clips. Cade McDonald's the one I saw catching every ball in the competition periods. He was really good 7-on-7 and team. Started his career at Michigan State, was there for 3 years, did nothing. I think he may have missed a year with injury in 2021. And then he transfers to Miami of Ohio. It's not like he really broke out either. I think he's legitimately a guy who was local enough, interesting as a slot guy. He's another slot guy. But he was 3rd on Miami of Ohio in receiving yards this past year. It's not as if he exploded. But, hey, they saw a guy who seemingly made the most of his opportunity at camp. And, again, like I said, if you watched any of that stuff, he was number 81. Kept catching balls and making plays.
No, he did.
Over the middle, scooting through and doing all that type of stuff. Again, not much size, nothing overwhelming. I think he had really nice agility testing, which is always helpful for that position. But, it's him and Flourier are sort of very similar in terms of how they operated. Another guy who's sort of interesting, I guess, impressed enough. Obviously, whatever you want to say, was clearly good enough to at least start at Michigan State. Maybe that's worth something. We'll see.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, that feed. Watch the same thing the entire time. It's trying to gather everything from it. It's the best we got right now. So, and your clips, of course, of camp and everything. So, here we are. Let's go right off the bat to because we talked for a long time. I'm going to go right to this is courtesy of Fox Sports. This is the faculty. Browns are the clearest path for Shedeur to starting is the name of this video. As soon as I find it, here we go. And some interesting stuff here from ex-players that are on the show. You think about what Daniels had to say about the reps, and do you think the Browns will have a different approach?
Both the answers from James Jones and Chase Daniel extraordinarily generic. You could insert name. Could fill in the answer, and that's not a shot at them. They're asked a question which should not have taken any TV time. The answer was be good or be better than everybody else. I mean, that's it. But they had to.
Their point though is just the opportunity is like even if you're good, do you as the fourth quarterback or even the third quarterback on any team in the NFL? I think this team, you have more of a chance because I think it's more of an open competition than obviously other places where quarterbacks are embedded, right, or entrenched. The opportunity is the opportunity there enough to make an impression enough to start early on. Now, I would tend to think that the Browns are looking for them to do things to make that impression or trying to give them as many chances as possible to make that impression.
I agree. I also think, and we'll see if it holds true, but based on what the Browns have been saying, and then what they did in terms of the rookie minicamp suggests they understand the circumstance they're currently saddled with.
Yeah.
They understand, to James Jones and Chase Daniels' point, they're absolutely right about how traditionally it works in terms of reps. Based on how the Browns operated their minicamp, the suggestion is that was a dress rehearsal for how they want to run real practice. So people who don't follow the Browns were surprised that the Browns had 56 people at rookie minicamp.
Yeah.
People who do follow the Browns remember when they had like 17 and the 1 year Bill Callahan was just chasing DeJuan Jones around.
Yeah.
So that is a real change. Now, obviously, they had a benefit in the fact that they signed 3 tryout receivers and all that stuff. But the reason they needed 56 guys is they wanted to practice faster. You're not going to get more practice time than what you already have been given by the NFL. So your answer to that, and this is what I talked about, I think last time we did the React, was your answer at that point is you got to play faster. You got to practice faster. I cannot state how much I hate NFL practices in terms of pace. They're slow, and this is not just a Browns thing, although the Browns have been guilty of this despite numerous head coaches. Teams just practice slow. There is not the urgency, and if you go to a well-run high school or a well-run college, they go fast. I've watched clinic talks given by the University of Georgia coaches on literally just going fast to the point where they have, their coach going through this tape and you have the offense finishing the rep and the second team is running onto the field on their heels to get lined up. The defense is coming out and they're getting ready to take advantage of every second of time. Go to Ohio State, they practice fast. Even though they've got all these dudes and everything else, they're trying to maximize every second of those practices. And those 2 teams have 3 of the last 4 national championships. and they met for one of those games. The Browns, and there used to be sort of this element of, well, they're professionals. There's partly one, they are really fast and really strong. So there's this element of you don't want to have these guys colliding too much because the collisions are bigger than, say, college or high school. But the money was also a factor. These guys are investments. Well, whether or not this is actually reality, I can't help but think the fact that college is now just paying these guys. College has not changed how they practice.
Right.
Like Caleb Downs is being paid at Ohio State, and they're still practicing super fast. They're still going super hard. That it's now you're getting paid for it. So I think in some ways, whether the Browns thought this out and discussed this and said, hey, listen, they're already programmed to do this and get paid for it. We need to go faster or not. I don't know. What I do know is they seem to understand that they, one, need to practice faster because they need to get more reps. Again, I don't think Joe Flacco is going to take a ton of reps, at least early, because he's 100 years old. His arm will fall off if they try to have him do a full training camp. I think Joe Flacco knows it. I think the team knows it, that there was a real benefit for him coming off the couch, so to speak, and having a rested arm and what that did for them. The fact that he doesn't need to do a million reps because he knows how the game works. He knows how the offense works. Yes, there's a chemistry element, but ultimately Joe Flacco is really good at throwing the football. So that is going to now allow these guys to get more reps, which is great. They need all the reps they can get. And even in that mini camp, like I saw people commenting that Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders weren't like interacting with each other. I got news for you. They didn't have time. They were going. It was quick. Yeah. They had to get in there and get the next rep. Like the one dude's finishing up his throw and doing whatever. And then the next guy had to get in there because he had to then get the rep.
Yeah. They were throwing at the same time.
There was that too. Yeah. They wanted to get reps, as many as they can get. And even though, there weren't a ton of team period reps or 7-on-7, they want to maximize them. The other element, which is irrelevant to what these guys are talking about, but sort of plays into where I think the Browns want to go. The Browns, when Kevin Stefanski brought all these guys back in, the Browns posted to their social media his opening sort of speech talking about earned toughness. They drafted a defensive tackle, a linebacker, 2 running backs, and granted, they drafted 2 quarterbacks. The one guy who's a pass catcher is 240 pounds. And by the way, Harold Fannin may be undersized in terms of height. He is a big kid. Jesus, he is thick. He's the pass catcher's 240. They want to be more physical, and let's be clear, they have to be.
They have to,
unless one of these guys, one of these quarterbacks is a huge surprise and a star that we do not see him coming. They do the Jaden Daniels thing, or some variation thereof, where they are in conversation of Rookie of the Year, or Kenny Pickett is the next Sam Darnold. The Browns are going to win by running the ball better, and they're going to win by playing great defense. And how is that going to happen? They have to be more physical. They have to liven up practices. And again, I don't mean taking guys to the ground. You can control that, but they've got to liven up in terms of they've got to hit. They've got to get better at that stuff to the point where that becomes their identity. They are consistently going into games and being the more physical team. They develop a reputation where in 2023, the defense had this a little bit.
Yeah.
The team that they played almost had a lingering effect their next week of playing. They need to embrace that. And that's going to happen by practicing more, practicing with higher intensity, getting more reps. Now, the part that I don't know what these guys are talking about in terms of preseason, I have my fingers crossed, and Kevin Stefanski can call me or we can talk about this. I don't want to see Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett near preseason. And last year, the Browns didn't want to put Deshaun Watson in preseason, but he sucked so much that they had to, and they had to drag all these other guys out on the field with him to do that. They had Denzel Ward get a concussion, inexcusably stupid.
Yeah.
Inexcusably stupid for him to be out there for the 7 to 10 reps or whatever it was, and then pick up an injury, and that injury in particular, but any injury. You're not getting readier by having these guys out for 7 to 10 reps. And if it's really going well, it's 6. It's 3 and out, and you're done.
Yeah.
You want to have them go through warm-ups, all that crap, so be it. I think it's a waste of time. If you practice more effectively and you get that stuff done in practice, you don't mess around with this crap. Instead, you use that preseason to really rep those young kids to get them ready, because you need a lot of these guys to contribute for you. And that becomes a huge element of developing them to get them ready, to really get a good look at the bottom of your roster, the 53 to 65 sort of range. Guys are going to be on your practice squad versus the guys who can fill out the bottom of your roster. And then special teams. Those things are critical, especially given how bad the Browns have been on special teams at points. If Kenny Pickett is taking reps in preseason, I don't care. And why don't I care? I watched him throw 158.3 rating in preseason, heard all about it, and then he was so good, he was traded after the season to the Philadelphia Eagles for nothing.
Yeah.
So it's not going to get him ready. It's not going to get Joe Flacco ready, but it can be really beneficial for Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. Straight up, I would tell you right here and now that they should split. They should have, each of them should play 3 halves of the 3 games and move on and just focus on those young guys. You know, I'd be curious to see how they handle the running back situation, because if Quinshon Judkins is going to be the bell cow, I don't know that you want him to get a whole lot of reps, but Dylan Sampson probably is going to need to get reps and some of those things. But don't waste time with starters. And people will try to talk you into this nonsense about, well, we got to get them running the lights. It's bullshit. They want to watch their guys play. And I totally understand it, but it's not going to make them any better. It's not going to make them any more prepared, because you saw this team play in preseason and they still weren't prepared for the season. Get it done in practice. I will harp on this until the end of time. And if you want a great example of this, the Los Angeles Rams, who over the course of like 3 years basically overhauled the entire roster, did exactly what I'm telling you to do. They did exactly this. They didn't mess around with any of their starters. In fact, some of their rookies didn't play a whole lot because they were expecting them to be major contributors. They put backups, other guys trying to audition for the other 31 teams, all that stuff out on their field. And the Rams were ready to go for the season. They didn't get any of their guys hurt. They're ready for a 17-game season and the playoffs. So that is the other element that allows you to then get as much exposure to Shedeur and Dillon Gabriel to allow them to impress as much as possible, so you can get a fairer evaluation, so you can get a good look at them, so you can feel good about them in terms of what you're going to do. If you do those things, practice better, practice faster, and then take the preseason as the way I'm laying out, even though that will make a whole lot of people unhappy because they don't get to see their guys. They will be better served for it, and hopefully there's the whole, there's the element of just getting lucky with injuries. There is that, but hopefully they're smart and do all the things they're supposed to do in terms of trying to reduce the exposure to that as much as possible. But this team has got to be more physical coming out of the gate, because some of the, after, and I get it. Like last year, it's so hamstrung by the situation.
Yeah.
And they couldn't afford to get anyone else hurt and all these other things. But then the injuries piled up at the beginning of the year because they were not physically prepared for the season. And they've got to find a way to get them physically prepared, send a message early, and be prepared to play a style of football that's going to help them win football games. I think that is hopefully the plan. I hope that is Kevin Stefanski's plan. The early returns, based on what I've seen, make me very cautiously optimistic. And I was really happy with what I saw from rookie minicamp, because I thought that was exactly how it should go. I'm hoping they hold true to that was a dress rehearsal for things to come, because that was way better in terms of practice.
Yeah, I agree. All really well said. And they have this year, they're not going to the Greenbrier, and they have, 2 weeks of, team on team, you know what I mean? Or I think 3 total sessions, but twice they will be going up against another team in practice, right? So you'll get
joint practices with the Eagles and the Panthers.
Yeah. You get those competitive, controlled environments as well, which I think can be really valuable too.
I don't think that's an accident either. I think that's the same thought process.
Right.
They want to get a good measuring stick to see where this team is at, but they want to They want to figure out if these guys are physical. And again, it's another way for them to see these quarterbacks perform in a way that's going to give them a fairer evaluation and sort of get them going against another defense. I like the approach. I hope for their sake they're rewarded for it in terms of they are not punished by a bunch of injuries and stuff, because unfortunately that can happen. But that's why you can try to mitigate that as much as possible in terms of, you play to the thud and all those things, and you don't have guys falling down and knees and ankles and all that stuff. You can try to reduce that as much as possible while still getting the team ready for the season.
Yeah, absolutely. That stuff is going to be absolutely critical, I think. So let's go to our second video here tonight. I'm going to go to the, this is courtesy of Get Up. And the crew on there. At the 3:40 mark here.
One-year-old tight end.
All right. Let's go from here-ish.
What I believe, that he was probably a second-round caliber player. And let's use Andy Dalton. Dominique, I would suggest that a young Andy Dalton would easily be the starting quarterback on these Cleveland Browns. I look at the room that he's walking into. Joe Flacco, who is 40 years old, he too has had a terrific career, but he's 40 years old. Deshaun Watson is never playing there again. Kenny Pickett is on his third team in 3 years. I know Dillon Gabriel was drafted ahead of him, but literally not one evaluator I know had Dillon Gabriel ranked ahead of Shedeur Sanders. He fell for entirely other reasons. The point I'm trying to make here, Dominique, is that while the weekend obviously felt like a disaster for him, the way it turned out, I think he wound up in a place where he has an excellent chance to play, which very rarely can you say about a quarterback drafted in the 5th round.
Yeah, I mean, I like the spin that you're putting on it, and I think you're right. He has an excellent chance to play, but you need to play well and play well fast if you're a 5th-round pick, and you're on a team that's probably projected to be near the top of the 1st round again next year. If he does not demonstrate in whatever time he gets in practice and in the games that he is a franchise quarterback, there's no waiting time. There's no investment in him. They're not going to go get all the pieces to put around him to make him play better like we've seen with Caleb Williams and other quarterbacks who are drafted in the 1st round. If he does not show that he is the franchise quarterback in this season at some point, they're drafting another quarterback in the 1st round next year. So I think you're right. He has a good chance of getting on the field, but he does not have a long leash or a lot of time to prove that he's the quarterback for this team for years to come.
I guess that's true.
I think it's totally fair about next year, don't you think? Like, unless one of these guys, Gabriel or Sanders, shows me in this season somehow, in some way, definitively that they are the franchise quarterback, I'm swinging again next year with the 2-1s.
Yeah, I've said, they practically got to be rookie of the year. That's a really difficult hill to climb. Either that or the Browns find them in some way out of position to draft a quarterback. Other than that, I don't see a downside for them taking one at the top, especially if they feel good about him. Whether they need to use both picks to be determined, but they are certainly in position, and they've got to get a huge sample size early that says this kid's really, really good. Now, to Greeny's point, I do think Shedeur is in a great spot in terms of system fit, in terms of the coach he's got, all those things. I think it's fine if he wants to say that nobody had Shedeur Sanders ahead of Dillon Gabriel. And he's right. I would push back and only say the following. Shedeur Sanders there are certain things that make him have the potential to be special. That Dillon Gabriel does not have. I would also say that that Shedeur Sanders has potentially fatal flaws that Dillon Gabriel does not have. That last part is why it may be harder. I mean, we'll see. But I would say that last part might make it more difficult for Shedeur to start early. There is less wrong, less to fix, less to address with Dillon Gabriel. Dillon Gabriel, unless the height is a big issue or whatever, he just has the biggest thing with Dillon Gabriel that I think is appealing for Kevin Stefanski. There are a lot of things that, the whole analytics and all those things, and he, he's accurate and all these other things. But the thing I think that will really help him potentially win the job is he has answers. When he's presented with a problem, he knows how to deal with it. He can really dice up a blitz. He knows how to get the ball to guys when he feels pressure. He's athletic enough that he can create with his legs to make himself interesting. He navigates the pocket really, really well. So just from that standpoint, just on his college film, you can sit there and go, I can put this guy in the game. Obviously, he's got to prove these things, but without fearing that he's going to screw it up or that he's going to make a whole bunch of bad decisions or put the team in a bad situation. I can't say that for Shedeur Sanders because of the amount of negative plays he had and some of the ways he handles volatile situations. He has often made bad situations worse or, not had the right answers for some of the problems that he could potentially face. Now, as we sit here on May 12th, he may find, those answers between now and September. But the mere fact that they exist, the mere fact that you can point to certain things with Shedeur Sanders and say he could be out of the league in 2 years, gives Dillon Gabriel the advantage in that sense. So I think it's going to be a little bit trickier for Shedeur than other people do. But there are certain things, his ability to throw the football, if he, it's special on its own. But if he can sort of develop a little bit more strength in these first couple seasons, the way that trainers and everything have gotten so much better at that, he could go from being a pretty good thrower to a downright special one. He's never going to be Cam Ward in terms of the arm or anything but with his accuracy and touch and the amount of throws in his arsenal, he can do some jaw-dropping stuff.
Based on the place that he was drafted, but if he had been drafted in the second round, we'd be talking about him right now as the starting quarterback of this team, and he's the same guy, right? He didn't play a football over the last 3
He
months.
wasn't drafted in the second round.
No, I understand that.
That's the thing. It's like, be legendary.
Is their starter this year?
I don't know if he makes the team this year. I don't know if we could say that. He's the 5th round pick who was the 4th quarterback on the depth chart right now, and the same insular world that told him to be legendary and you're a first-round pick and don't be a combine, workout guy and don't do the Senior Bowl and don't do it. I would hope someone is like, all right, let's reset this and say it's going to be a little different right now. The path has changed, and everyone's assuming that that their light has gone off and he's going to just come in and just be like, all right, I'm going to be a backup, be seen, not heard. I want to do everything I can to make this team. We don't know that.
Well,
so I think it's, yes, his ability. That's what's all along. It's reality, and if he gets to Browns camp and isn't willing to be the first one in, the last one out, and isn't willing to prepare the others like Dillon Gabriel will, we don't even know if he's going to make it for week 1.
Tim, I have a moment left. Go ahead, finish it up. What is your expectation?
Yeah, well, Peter's exactly right. It's not a lock that he makes the roster, out of camp. Look at 5th round, picks. They don't always make the team right out of camp. But I would say this, Greeny, to your point, if you're a 5th round pick, especially a quarterback, you're looking for any glimmer of hope for an opportunity to have an impact, prove to people that you can play. Any glimmer of hope. And so to your point, the glimmer of hope is this. Joe Flacco hadn't started an entire season since 2017. Kenny Pickett came in as a first rounder in 2022, is already on his 3rd team, and then you're dealing with another rookie. That's your glimmer of hope, but it is like put your head down and work, as Peter said.
Yes, hopefully he will do that. And what I will say is if he's as good as a lot of people were telling me before the draft they thought he was, I think he has a chance to become this team's.
They need him. Let's take what they did last.
So it's an interesting conversation. I thought Peter Schrager made some good points. Like, people are assuming that the process that somewhat, the people around him and the kind of the process that failed him and made him a 5th round pick, people are assuming that will just go away now. But I do think we have seen signs that now that he's on his own, and even just in his press conference in Cleveland, that he does have a little bit different approach than I'm not going to work out, or the combative interviews we heard about and all that stuff. It seemed, I saw, we weren't there, what you could see from minicamp and what you heard in the interview with him at rookie minicamp, there was no sign of that like there was before, I didn't think.
Yeah, I mean, the draft process, he was hiding things. I mean, that's why you don't do – I mean, one, there's the element of thought he was way better than he was, but for the most part, you don't test when you're scared of what people are going to see. That's gone. Now he's got to prove it and do everything he can. So, I mean –
right.
And I don't know if he was saying, I don't want to do these things, or if he was just advised not to do them. But regardless, now he's in a position where he has to fight. The only thing I can say, whether or not he's truly the 4th string quarterback, I mean, by virtue of, as we sit here today, if you gunned to Kevin Stefanski's head, made him fill out a depth chart he doesn't have to fill out, yeah, Shedeur's probably the 4th string quarterback. And from that standpoint, there might not be a team that I can think of in recent history where the 4th string quarterback doesn't have a better path to potentially starting. But one, I don't think the Browns really view him as the 4th string. I think they just sit there and look, we have 2 rookies. They're basically even in terms of that. And then we'll see what happens when they actually do have to make a depth chart. But, he's got every opportunity to make this thing work. Again, I think, as we've discussed, I think the Browns are going to be creative in terms of how they manifest more reps to try to get as much development, as much coaching, as much work as possible for these guys, so they can feel confident that they're making the right decision. And when we get to August, we may find out, wow, he's way better than a 5th round pick, or we might find out, well, the kid just can't play. Well, I'll hold off on my thoughts on what I saw from rookie minicamp until we get there. But again, I will just reiterate, no one won anything at rookie minicamp other than they didn't sort of, embarrass themselves and make the team wonder what the hell did we just do?
Right. Okay. Yeah, well, I can't wait to hear more of what you thought, though. But let's get a quick glimpse into what Zach Jackson and the UCSS guys said. Zach was there, obviously, and then we'll listen to what they said about his evaluation. Now, there are a number of people that have said, I will preface this video with that there are a number of beat reporters that have said that Dillon Gabriel looked better. Tony Grossi said that. The 92.3 The Fan. What's his name? What's his the beat reporter there?
Which one?
Daryl Ryder has said that he thought Dillon Gabriel looked better. And then a number of people have said they thought Shedeur looked better. So here is Zach Jackson on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show.
Rookie minicamp with our guy, Zach Jackson. Zach's brought to us today by Buckeye State Credit Union. If you're unfamiliar with them, let me know who told us the truth from Browns camp last season about the quarterback position. It is Zach Jackson from The Athletic. And I texted Steve Becker over the weekend and said, Steve, we need Zach in on Monday to bring us some clarity from the only 2 eyes that got it right last year about what they saw from Shedeur Sanders and Dillon Gabriel this weekend. What's up, Zach?
Hi, guys. How we doing?
So who's the starter?
Probably Joe Flacco.
We did solve it, didn't we, over the last 3 days?
Yeah. I probably foolishly underplayed the amount of reaction that there would be to Ricky Minicamp.
I refuse to participate in this.
We mocked it all day Friday. We said that we predicted what's going to happen, and we saw respected journalists, guys. That's the thing that got me. Like serious, diehard, respected journalists that were writing things and posting videos like this was.
I told you Friday. I said you said what storylines is coming?
No. What we talked about Friday was what happened tomorrow going to make a difference? And then we were talking about how it was going to be reported. That's two different things. That's reality and some sort of alternative universe that we lived in which 5-yard swing routes suddenly become. This was an elite throw from a high level.
We have Zach here, so Zach, tell us what you actually saw because we were not able to be there in person.
Okay.
I need your first.
Did anything make you go, "Oh my God"?
I mean, I'm impressed with the way Shedeur threw the ball. Like it jumps off his hands, it spins it. Now, I don't think it's about how it's covered. It's more about what we've seen.
Sure.
Right? Like this is what an NFL quarterback's supposed to look like. So, in the realm of it, it's day one. It's step one. I'll remember one thing. Right? I'm watching from behind. And Tommy Rees, the new offensive coordinator, and Bill Musgrave, the new quarterbacks coach, they are never further than we are from either guy, either rookie QB.
Standing right there.
So at one point, I kind of walk over to get a different angle, and Stefanski walks over, and it's Shedeur's turn. He calls him over. He relays something to him. Shedeur goes in the huddle. Like that's what they're evaluating. Take the play call, command the huddle, get everyone lined up. It's day one. Right. The other stuff. They'll see. They know he can throw, right?
And they that's already there.
Yeah, so that's what they're doing. And for Shedeur and Gabriel both, that's what it's going to be. How quickly do they process? How do they take advantage? I think the one thing that was newsworthy that came out of the whole weekend was Kevin saying, look, in rookie minicamp, it's not that much, but we did add competitive periods. We need to get these guys reps, and they need to maximize reps, so we're going to do this. We're going to sign more wide receivers because in the middle of practice, we're going to have an extra 7-on-7 session because guys have to be ready. So you look at Shedeur Sanders, he looks like he throws it like an NFL quarterback, and that's where we are. He starts on the field tomorrow with Flacco, with Pickett, with everybody else, and we'll see where they are. I think it's 2 weeks from Wednesday. Yeah, 2 weeks from Wednesday is the first time we'll actually see them full team on the field.
I'm interested in seeing what Kevin Stefanski has done and the way he's changed the way he runs practice. Can you give us?
Oh, he just told you that. But anyways,
he sure did.
He just clearly stated it.
Yeah,
but let me ask you: do you agree? From what we could see. You know what I mean? Do you agree that like there's a difference in the way that the ball looks at when Shedeur throws it and when Dillon Gabriel throws it?
I think for the most part, it's a taste thing. Dillon Gabriel throws the ball harder. He does. He can rip it if he wants to.
He does. Yeah.
Having said that, and for people who read the comprehensive breakdowns, you watch Shedeur's tape. I'm in awe of some of the stuff he can do with the football, like ball placement, touch, the accuracy. He doesn't just throw catchable balls. He throws pinpoint balls where, like, you sit there and you have a debate. If you were to ask the question, could he put this in a better spot? There's a lot of times where it's like, I don't know if he could.
Right.
And aesthetically, he was coached by, he has that. He was coached by Jeff Blake to throw that pretty deep ball. And look, aesthetically, it's a beautiful thing to watch him throw those big arcing passes like Blake used to throw to Carl Pickens. And like when you watch him do that, it's easy to fall in love with that. But I would tell you that is why he's here. Like those are your priors. Like that's why Shedeur was talked about as being so good because he can do those things with the football. So in this format, he should look good. Like this is
right.
That doesn't. I don't mean to. I don't want to say to somebody, don't get excited because he throws the ball really well. Like I would say that is the reason to be excited about Shedeur Sanders. Like he is, at times he's a damn artist with the ball, and you're sitting there going, "Woof, man, there's some stuff there." You're like jaw dropping. Now, having said that, I also saw a couple balls come out of his hand that like basically went sideways, end over end type stuff.
Yeah,
Dillon Gabriel snaps the ball off. It's always going to look a little bit goofy because he's short, but he can rifle it. Made some good throws, but like I thought Zach's analysis of it was exactly right. Like, yeah, you want these guys to look pretty good, but they should. Like, you just had a draft where 256 guys got picked. The Browns took 7 of them, including the 2 quarterbacks. They had 51 other guys at camp who were not them. So that means undrafted rookies and a couple guys that were undrafted rookies last year that they brought back. So, yeah, I mean, like they signed 3 guys that have a shot to make it to the NFL. But by and large, you just at first blush, you're sitting and going, 49 of these guys aren't going to be in the NFL at any level. So it should look good. So I don't want to put the cart in front of the horse. It's this weird balance because I don't want to tell somebody don't be excited because I don't like this notion of, I don't know if you even have the clip, but of a certain local radio host who talked about dividing the fan base based on drafting 2 quarterbacks.
Yeah.
My interpretation of that is people are engaged and excited about what the Browns are doing, which is a hell of a lot different than it was coming out of last year, where it was, people were indifferent. People were, antagonistic to watching this team. They wanted no part of it. I've talked to people who have been either left the Browns with Deshaun Watson, or some who have, last year was like who are engaged in this thing and are rooting for Shedeur Sanders or are just interested to see how this thing goes because it's fun. It's legitimately fun. So I don't want to, sort of ruin that for anybody. What I am trying to stress is, to Jason Lloyd's point, it is May 12th.
Yep.
Let these guys do it because all of a sudden they're going to be throwing against real NFL players, and it may not go easily for them. Now, I'm inclined to believe that both of these guys are actually going to do pretty well in 7-on-7 periods, just because they are good throwers of the football. And until we get lines out there and until we get pads on, it's going to be sort of a little awkward. But hell, I'm going to tell you, enjoy the ride. I think both guys confirmed their priors in terms of what I thought I was going to see from them.
Yeah.
I didn't see anything that sort of surprised me in terms of either they were better or worse. I mean, 1, small sample size, and 2, if you use the metrics that I cited from Jim Coburn, the Browns took the 2 best graded quarterbacks in terms of career efficiency from a passing standpoint. Shedeur was number 1. Dillon Gabriel was number 2. Like, the one thing that these guys should be able to do is get through these periods without the ball hitting the ground much.
Yeah.
And they pass. I mean, again, this is not a bad thing. It's just, let's take it one step at a time. If you're making any grand proclamations about this, that so-and-so is going to start, or, that when they go to London, they're ready to make their move.
Yeah.
You sound ridiculous. They're going to let this play out. They're going to see what they can do. But Zach is exactly right in terms of it's really about their ability to learn and process information, take coaching, and be able to apply it. And, we're not privy to those conversations. So if you're just sort of casually looking in, you could sit there and go, "Oh, this guy looked pretty good." But the Browns may be sitting there. And there were a couple of situations, I'm not going to name quarterbacks, where either 1, there were reads I thought maybe something else was better, or 2, when you hold on to the ball that long in 7-on-7, you can sort of get away with that, but that's not real football. And some of those are probably going to be more likely sacks. So, and I saw this from each guy had various issues where I can sit there and go, yeah, that's fine for this, but it's probably not going to work in real life. So that's fine. So I think I love the enthusiasm. I think it's great. I just think you've got to be a little bit reasonable in terms of what you can expect from what, they signed 3 receivers. They had 12 or 11 undrafted rookies that they signed, and they waived a couple of those with injuries. And then a whole bunch of guys who are not on the Browns and may not be on anybody's team in, short order. And they're either going to be looking for jobs in Canada, in the UFL, or doing something else. So you have to take these things as they are. I'm excited to see what these guys can do when they are playing against better competition. But obviously, and I'll say this, just using Mason Graham as an example, I actually thought he looked pretty good with not having pads on. I thought he looked reasonably quick. But like there couldn't be more of a position where talk to me when we get pads on than defensive tackle. So like none of this matters really. I mean, it's fun. It's certainly I'm going to watch it and get as much as I can out of all this stuff. But until they're doing this again with pads on and beating Denzel Ward and Martin Emerson and Grant Delpit, like, okay, now you've got me going, okay, now they really got something. So right now it's fine. It's fun. I'm glad they're doing well relative to what I can see but we don't know enough. So coming to some grand opinion on what we think or who's in the lead. Look, you can think what you can think what you think. You have your opinion, but ultimately, I just don't know what you're getting from that at this stage.
Yeah, I'm with you on this weekend. You wanted to see them both look good, and I thought they both looked reasonably good, which you should expect them to at this point, right? And I have high hopes for both of them. And then, Zach, at times can be extremely negative, but he'll tell you the truth about what he thinks he saw, generally. So, I appreciate the little tidbits about Stefanski and taking coaching and stuff and what he thinks he saw there. It's nothing huge to take away. You would assume, to your point, that Shedeur would throw a more impressive ball just, on the surface level. And he did say, when everybody else was trying to say that Watson looked great, that he looked bad for the last 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing you take away, again, so much of this is just don't look awful. Because if Zach comes on here and goes, oof, I don't know if this Dillon Gabriel guy can play, or he's Shedeur was rough or whatever. Against this competition, you should be sitting there going, oh my God, what did they do?
Yeah, not great.
Again, they beat the necessary threshold for where they're at now. We'll see where they're at, in a couple weeks, in a month. When we come out of mini camp, I'm curious. One of these things where I'd love to be a fly on the wall. What is the homework that they are getting for when they go on summer vacation? Because even though it's technically summer vacation, it's really go train on your own time before we come to training camp. So there's a lot of things that we don't have access to in terms of that. But I'm very curious to see. If we find out some of these things and ultimately where we end up. But for now, it's a good start. Let's see where it ends up. I mean, the funny thing is, like, the quarterbacks are certainly really fun to watch. They weren't the group that impressed me the most, I don't think. Honestly, I think it was the running backs. But, again, they don't have pads on either.
Did you catch the mic'd up video with Tommy?
I did.
Thought that was pretty cool. I mean, we're not privy to a lot, but it seemed like he certainly had good chemistry with them. And I mean,
so much of this, like, look,
it's an instant.
The mood could change real fast, but right now he's, as somebody who's not on the NFL level or anywhere close, but as somebody who's coached, you're just like at this point, you're just thrilled to get your guys out there and start working because everybody's feeling good. It's not the doldrums of summer, even though you have stuff that you're super focused on getting done and you want to make the most of every practice. Like, you aren't going to get guys who are more excited now than the rookies coming out for their first practice, in an NFL team with an NFL, the whole deal. These guys are giddy to be out there. That energy, you're going to feed off that energy. So, I mean, I could relate to Tommy Rees. I'm sure he's loving life with that because ultimately this is what he wants to do. You want to coach these guys. You want to get these guys. And like, so where I don't, assuming they properly navigate the challenges that come with this and the reps and everything, that Tommy Rees, Bill Musgrave, and Kevin Stefanski are loving the fact that they've got three youngish quarterbacks to coach, and And
a
even
guy
if
that
like it
doesn't
doesn't
need
work,
much coaching. Yeah.
even if it doesn't work, they're going to get another one next year. And on some level, obviously, look, nothing would be better than one of these guys breaks out and is great.
Yeah.
But I do hope that if we are going to be, if we are fast forwarding a year from now and we're talking about the quarterback they just drafted with early pick, that this year proves to be super valuable in terms of learning the lessons necessary to put that player in the best position to succeed, both in terms of how you practice, how you teach, all those things.
And expectations would certainly be different for a player like that as well, for how you start the season, things like that. If you take a player in the first round, expectation for play time will, and when that play time comes is if you don't have a franchise quarterback already crowned on your roster, certainly becomes a point of contention. No.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, this is the benefit. This is the advantage they have, and that they are not married to anybody for this. They have complete and total freedom at the quarterback position this year. If they take a quarterback in the top 5, that's over, because obviously everything is now geared toward how long is it going to take for this guy to be ready? Is he going to be able to start this year? And if not right away, is it going to be partway through the season? Is it going to be year 2? And even if he's not starting this year, everything is going to be scrutinized in terms of what are we doing to make sure that guy's ready. This year, it's completely wide open. You get to just be like, you get to basically, obviously, you're putting a lot on these guys' plates and you're trying to coach them as much as you can. But there's this element where you get to just sort of hands off and say, show me who's good. And you get to be like, okay, we're going to roll with the guy who's showing us the most.
All right. This is an embarrassing clip. I want to show this because, I just found this so unbelievably disrespectful and childish, and I have to show it. I'm sorry.
Like I'm gonna go get that rep, and I live it like that. Appreciate it. Thank you guys. Thank you.
Okay. That's Chris Easterling saying, I'm taller than him 3 separate times in 3 separate directions. Why are we doing this?
Like I'm going to go get that rep. And
come on, man.
I live it like that. Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say he doesn't realize he's on camera. But
no doubt. But
what I would say to that is, one, Dillon Gabriel has been measured. So I'm taller than Dillon Gabriel. I'm going to confess.
So am I.
I knew that. I don't have to go stand next to him to know that. I've seen how tall he is. He's 5'11" and 1/8. I'm taller than that. So I'm taller than Dillon Gabriel. Dillon Gabriel is also bigger, stronger, faster, and can throw the ball a hell of a lot harder than I can. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say he's all of those things better than Chris Easterling as well. He's short. This is not a secret. Again, I'm not going to go along with the idea like Nathan Zagura and say if he was 6'3", he'd be the number 2 pick in the draft. I don't see enough with him to make that leap. But I also don't sit here and go, he can't play because he's short. We watched Baker Mayfield excel with the Browns despite being short. Relative to, Dillon Gabriel's not even short. He's just short for being a quarterback. So, and here's the thing. Could it be a huge issue? Yeah, in fact, watching some of that minicamp footage, the Browns brought in some of the biggest people ever, including D'Artagnan, what's his face?
Tinsley
from Cincinnati, who's a giant human. They've got Roy Mbeketa, who's from the international whatever pool thing, who's a giant. They have a bunch of these massive linemen, and behind them, Dillon Gabriel does look very short. But Dillon Gabriel has been short his entire time in college, and he just played behind 2 tackles who were drafted in the NFL.
Yeah.
And
here's my question about that.
Was able to thrive in that circumstance. Is his height going to be an issue? It could be. It could absolutely limit what he can achieve in the NFL. But could he succeed in spite of it? Yeah. And he's done that to this point.
that was my question. Like, you did the breakdown on him and the data, and I know I've watched film breakdowns on him and watched tape of different games from going back to Oklahoma, but like, where do you come out on like, does the size show up in his college film? Because it doesn't really, to me, show up. Like, it doesn't seem to be a big factor in his college play.
Occasionally it does. Now,
Okay.
I'll start with this, and some of this is the offensive line. But between two programs, Shedeur Sanders had more batted passes than Dillon Gabriel did. Not even close.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Not even close. That is, if you're sitting there now, again, Oregon had a really good line. Oklahoma did pretty well for him in that department, but interested in terms of who had more batted passes, Shedeur Sanders had way more knocked down at the line of scrimmage. But, just like with Baker Mayfield, so much of it is where are your eyes, how fast can you process and anticipate where these things are, and where can you find the holes in the line to make the throws. And Dillon Gabriel has shown the ability to solve that problem. But I do at times see situations where I don't think he can see the middle of the field and misses a throw. Now, some of that may purely be that his eyes are just not in the right place. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say some of those are his views obstructed. But
yeah, I mean, that would be common sense. Yeah.
If he was 6'6", and he missed that throw, obviously I wouldn't say it's height. I would just say he's not looking. His eyes aren't in the right place. But by and large, I understand why Kevin Stefanski said it really did not show up on tape, even if I might disagree a little bit. Overall, you notice his height because he's quite short. But overall, I don't sit here and go, man, he's going to suck because he's short. I sit here and go, I don't know the answer to that. It's going to be different in the NFL. He's going to play more teams that can have a real interior pass rush. I think he's going to have issues dealing with a muddy pocket. But to his credit, as I've said before, he has answers. He's athletic enough where he can get outside the pocket. He's athletic enough where he can maneuver in the pocket and find the necessary passing lanes. And he tends to know where the ball needs to go in order to address the issue. And likewise, teams might blitz to try to obscure passing windows. And I think he's done a phenomenal job in being able to diagnose and understand where the ball needs to go when facing the blitz. So to be determined on just how much of a problem his height is. Shedeur is taller than he is, looks the part more than he does in terms of traditional
over the top
stature. Yeah. But, at least he's played at 3 different programs. It has not shown up to this point.
They also have said, I've heard Zagura say this a couple times, that Gabriel had the best pre-draft process of any quarterback. Do you believe that to be true as well? I mean,
impossible for me to validate other than say he did really well in the All-Star stuff. He just, he wasn't one of the big names, so he didn't get a whole lot of publicity from that standpoint. He did fine. And then based on just what I see from him just in press conferences and the way he sort of handles himself, it would not shock me if he's all business and super focused in interviews. And again, if he has the answers he has all the answers to the test in terms of what's happening on the field, I imagine he's really good at being able to.
Then he should do well on the whiteboard, right?
Right. Okay. Whiteboard. Now, those two things aren't necessarily related. Being able to process information quickly in terms of what you see on the field isn't quite necessarily the same as, being able to quickly spit back a cadence that's been said to you. And obviously you can learn some of those things, but nevertheless, he just seems to be a quick processor, a guy who's quick on his feet in terms of how he's able to handle these things. And I could see where he crushes it from that standpoint. And I think because he's 5'11", he had to. Like that, he's obviously very smart in general. He's also old, 24, could be a 25-year-old rookie. I don't love that part. But
No.
that is all. I mean, he's also been a quarterback in college for 6 years and played 63 games. So he has prepared like a starter. He's had to prepare for defenses. He's had to learn 3 different offenses. He's had all these different teams trying to prepare for him. So he's had to deal with how teams are adjusting to him. So to me, I assume this is just right in his wheelhouse in terms of these things, and he should crush it, as opposed to, and not saying, that it's an excuse that Jackson Dart would not do well. I'm sure he did well, knowing how well he did with the Browns, but still, Dillon Gabriel is 3 years older than Jackson Dart. Like, you might be a little bit more forgiving with a quarterback who's 21, who has some starts but not done. Obviously, Dart had a ton in his own right, so that's why I think he did really well, and he's really smart. But there are other quarterbacks where you could sit there and you might give them a little bit more slack in terms of what they do, even though it might be enlightening in terms of your overall evaluation. I would not be surprised if Dillon Gabriel crushed it. I just listening to him talk, I could see him, Kevin Stefanski, sort of looking at him and being almost like looking at him almost like a son in terms of just how similar they are.
Processing. So on the other hand, last question, because we're running out of time here. But so last question, we've watched plenty of tape on both guys, and you knew what they were coming out and what your thoughts and evaluations of were for both of them. And we've seen what they did in rookie minicamp. And has anything changed for you? Like the more that I'll admit I didn't do as much work on Gabriel before the draft. I mean, why would I, right? Like, I had never really expected them to consider him. Here he was circled for days, right? As I did on Shedeur and Cam Ward and other guys like Dart. But since doing more work, you are become impressed with some things that you weren't aware of before. And I certainly think Shedeur has a skill set, to your point, that could be special. You talked about the answers and the processing and stuff with Gabriel. Do you feel that same way about Sanders? Like, does he process the field well enough to make you think he can do it at a high level in the pros? Or is that something you get? Is that too far of a leap to make?
I don't think he's a great processor, honestly, to this point.
Okay.
And again, this comes down to some of this is obviously on protection, but I don't. This is one of the issues I have with him. He needs to come up with more answers. And if he's a great processor, he wouldn't take some of the sacks he takes. He wouldn't sort of double clutch and pull down some of the balls he does. There are clearly times when the defense is doing something that sort of throws him and makes him second guess himself.
And he should be able to identify it.
I don't know about should, but just didn't. And so I think when Shedeur knows what he's looking at, he's very confident. He's phenomenal. Like he's absolutely tremendous. And if you're sitting there and saying, well, Shedeur isn't great when it comes to stuff he hasn't familiarized himself with. Well, ultimately, if he's going to last long enough, he will familiarize himself. Now, the question will then be, how is he going to then be able to sort of deal with, stuff on the fly, disguise coverages, things were being switched up. But like, again, I'll use BYU as the example. Like BYU just threw stuff at him.
Yeah.
And there were times where it just did not go well. Having said that, like none of this can't be solved by reps. Like if he just does it and does it and does it and keeps doing that may be what he is. We've heard both rookie minicamp days that he was a guy who was out there 20 minutes longer with receivers working, and that may be his process. And that's not to say Dillon Gabriel doesn't need that or whatever. All I'm saying is everybody's their own person. They know themselves well enough to say, this is what I need to do to get myself in the best position. And I don't know what, to each their own in that point. Everybody, people learn differently. Some guys can look at a play on the board and immediately go, that I can do that. Some people can be told something and immediately get it. And then you got people who need to feel it, that sort of tactile
Physically.
learning where they've got to
Yeah.
feel it out and do it before they can do it. I don't know. And this is one of the things you want to figure out in the draft process. You want to figure out what type of learner, and this goes beyond quarterback, but certainly applies to quarterback, what type of learner they are. Because ultimately you have to decide, can I cater to that? Can I, it's
Can we
behooves you to
get
be
him
able
there?
to do it.
Yeah.
But you have to be able to put yourself in a position where they, you figure out this guy learns a certain way.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to do that, put them in the positions they're able to do that. Like, you can't say, well, I'm just going to give you the playbook and you got to figure it out. If they're a tactile learner, you've got to make it so they can feel their way through it and do those things.
Sure.
So it becomes difficult to sort of like, and becomes very, very easy to sort of be judgmental and go, well, he didn't do this thing, so he can't. Like, I'm not going to say that. What I am going to say is, again, he needs to figure out more answers, and I'm not going to rule out the possibility he can learn it. I've said, I think the negative plays in terms of figuring out answers and playing backwards, those are three things which any one of those things could individually end Shedeur Sanders' career. All of that said, he could solve all those problems by September and be ready to go. Yeah. I'm not going to suggest it's easy or that will happen. I'm just saying that that's the range of outcomes that you could see. Any of those three things could absolutely sink his career because teams aren't going to deal with negative plays. He doesn't have the strength necessary to play backwards the way he has. And again, that might entirely be a function of what he's done. Although in that particular case, I think he's been doing that since he's been playing in high school.
What do you mean by play backwards? Like through his progressions?
No, playing backwards is in he keeps wanting to drift back.
You're just literally like the drifting.
Yeah, he's literally playing backwards. Whereas, one of the things talking about the draft and sort of like one of the big delineations from a anonymous scout was Jackson Dart is consistently playing forward. I would say Dillon Gabriel is consistently playing forward. To this point,
pressing up in the pocket
backwards. Yeah. And if you're Jordan Love and you've got the tools to do it, you can get away with it. Aaron Rodgers has been able to get away with it in some respects, but Shedeur doesn't. So he's got to figure it out. And hopefully, the process of him being able to trust protection, all those things is going to happen because he's got to figure that part out. Otherwise, he could be in a situation where he's completely boned. Like if we're in the preseason and I'm watching him run backwards 10 yards and take a bad sack, like it's not going to go well. Right. The Browns aren't good enough for that. No NFL team is. So those are things he's got to solve. But he's got a trump card in the form of his throwing ability. He is just that good. And the biggest, I've been asked, like, Dillon Gabriel does all these things better than Shedeur does. What does Shedeur do better than Dillon Gabriel? It's the number of throws in his arsenal. It's the amount of different ways he can beat you. His sense of not only accuracy, his ability to put the right amount of touch at the right situation. He knows how to. I know Shedeur's gotten a lot of criticism for he doesn't really attack the middle of the field all that much, but when he does, like he's really good at just getting just enough over the second level defender or just enough to get over the third level defender. He has I don't want to say it's uncanny because he's been training at this forever. And there's some people who criticize his mechanics. I think his mechanics are really strong.
Yeah.
And really, really well educated because he can throw off platform really accurately. And that's something he's been clearly working on. That part of him has the potential to be special and game breaking. He's got to solve the other stuff. And if he can hopefully he's going to get stronger in his throwing and stuff like that. But then the potential is there for him to be a really, really strong quarterback.
Tremendous stuff, Pete, as always. We're going to get out of here. This has been the React on the OBR Streaming Network. Stick around all week with us, especially for our 8 p.m. Tomorrow night. Actually, we're going to start at 7 p.m., but the schedule will come out at 8 p.m. Schedule release special, 7 p.m. Wednesday night. We'll be here to break it all down for you when we get the Browns schedule, which will be oh so critical. Which games will Flacco get before his arm falls off? All that fun stuff. Any comments, Pete, before we get out of here?
I'll just say shout out Abby Mueller. This is schedule release day is her day. The NFL came up with this entirely for Abby Mueller. Nobody on earth is more excited about schedule release than she is. So I hope she enjoys it. Beyond that, subscribe to the OBR, keep supporting us. You keep seeing more and more stuff. The growth on YouTube in particular has been phenomenal. But we'll keep it going in terms of coverage. And I'm curious to see, like everybody else is, where this thing's going to go.
Yep. Thank you all for watching, and hit like, subscribe, tell a friend. We'll see you next week or tomorrow night. Hopefully tomorrow night. Have a wonderful evening. For Pete Smith, my name is Brad Ward. We are out.